Welcome to the Sweaty Pillow. We have such a special guest, somebody I know really well. We've traveled together. We went on an entrepreneurial journey together in Austin, Texas. Today we have Dr. Jana Rieger, and I'm going to read out such an impressive and interesting and diverse bio because I wouldn't be able to remember all of these important details of this woman's impressive background. So Dr. Reiger is a PhD in rehabilitation science at the University of Alberta, a prior clinician, researcher, and professor also at the U of A, and an entrepreneur specializing in wearable devices in health tech. Jana is the co-founder and CEO of True Angle and was awarded the Women in Tech Award in 2024 by Start Alberta. And get this, Dr. Reiger published a novel in 2017 called A Course in Deception. I mean, how do you fit this in? Who are you? We need to get your vitamins. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Oh, my pleasure, Lara. Thank you for having me.
So when I saw you 2 years ago, we've kept in touch here and there. You were working on some other incredible medical intervention, but now you have breath. Mm-hmm. And it is so important and applicable to our community of women. But tell us about your journey in research, what led you to breath, your background, and all of those good things.
Okay, sounds good. I'd love to. And it's a bit of a circle, so I'll try to go quickly through it. My PhD was actually in looking at breathing and how we breathe and how we interact with technology. When I finished my PhD, I was really fortunate to start to work in an institute that was helping people who had mostly head and neck cancer. And through that journey and being a researcher, eventually I created a technology to help them with a problem that was really massive, which was not being able to swallow. And this isn't like, oh, it hurts a little to swallow. This is like my life is threatened because I can't swallow properly and food might go down the wrong way and I may choke or die. So we created a wearable that helped people stick to an exercise program that would help them with this. And as we, and when I say we, I mean, we spun this technology out of my lab into a company. As we were looking at what else could we do for patients, we looked at what are some of the big risks for them. And so tons of anxiety around just every day getting up and thinking, okay, I have to eat, but I'm terrified. And risk to the respiratory system or the lungs because of food and stuff going down the wrong way. And we said, okay, we're experts in wearables. So let's look at wearables and what we could create. And that led us to breath. But as we were going down and journeying down that road, what we realized is that this is so much bigger than just one specific medical condition. This is everybody in this world. This is everyone who's breathing, everybody who, if we could get them into a proper breathing mechanic, we could help them with things like anxiety, things like sleep, etc. So it became this really much bigger notion around, okay, how can we get this out to the general population? So that was the basic journey to breath.
Yeah, that's impressive. And if we think about how important breath is in general, and in all of the research and all of the doctors we've spoken to in a year of doing this podcast, it hasn't come up once on changes you can make in your lifestyle, your health, that could have a really drastic impact on mental health, anxiety, which is so prevalent in women going through the menopausal transition. That was really interesting. And it didn't even faze me that it was a thing until I went down kind of the rabbit hole and looking at all of the impressive research that you sent in preparation for this podcast. So tell us about these bodies of research and what it led you to.
Yeah, for sure. So, and you know what? There's a ton of research out there. So I'll zero in on the stuff that would be most relevant for your audience here. And when we look at the population of women who are either going into menopause or in menopause or even after menopause, there's all these changes in our bodies that just by using our breath differently, we can affect. And I love, well, I'm not sure I love hearing you say it, but it's so interesting for me to hear you say, Lara, that no one's brought breathing up, because it's such a fundamental thing, and it's something we all have access to, and we can all change. So when you look at the literature around menopause, what you see is that at a very basic level, in women who are going through it, there's changes to the nervous system. So there's lots of changes. There's hormonal and everything.
Yeah.
But we have this part of our nervous system. It's called the autonomic nervous system. So it's the one we don't really think about. And there's two sides to it. And the one side to it, a lot of people probably have heard of, it's fight or flight. And we know that, like, okay, something is scary or whatever that part of your nervous system triggers, and there's a rush of chemicals in your body, and you're able to react the way you need to, like get out of the situation when the tiger's chasing you. And then there's this other side that balances that side. It's the parasympathetic side, or much more easier to remember, the rest and digest side. And not as many people have heard about that side. In women going through menopause, that fight or flight side is activated more. It becomes very active, and that rest and digest becomes less active. So now you're out of balance. So when that fight or flight is activated all the time, anxiety is one of the potential side effects of that. And if you think about just society in general, not just menopausal women, but everyone, we're functioning at this level where we have so much more anxiety in our life. Like, we're just never getting out of that state. We're always at this low level of like fight or flight. And we were never meant to be like that as humans. Like, that was meant to get us away from the tiger. But we are just continuously in that. If you think of all the pressures, my interest around technology and like what happens when you're like reading emails or when you're interacting, things are pinging at you. There's this constant like barrage of stuff that can make us anxious. So we don't get out of that enough. But simply by changing our breathing, the way we breathe, taking time to consciously breathe every day, we can activate that rest and digest system. It's connected to a nerve that it's called the vagus. And when we do specific breathing exercises, we can stimulate that nerve. And then that nerve sends out a bunch of chemicals that are like, hey, chill out. Life is good. So that's some of the ways that breathing, which is never talked about, but can affect these things in a really positive way. I think the other thing for women who are going into or in menopause is that there's been shown that there's lung function decline automatically. Mm-hmm. And part of that is hormonal, part of that is aging. So all of our muscles, as we age, lose mass. And breathing relies on muscles. Like, we have to like pull open our rib cage and lower our diaphragm to get a nice full breath in. And those are muscles, and they lose mass just like any other muscle in the body. So it's kind of like keeping them tuned is important as well. And then related to all of that is things like blood pressure. So hypertension is another thing that can affect women in menopause, and that can be substantially reduced with breathing.
Oh my God, it's so fascinating. One of the research reports you sent to me connects to the very high level of risk of women in menopause with a cardiac event. Yeah. So talk to us about any of the research around higher levels of anxiety associated with increased cardiovascular risk, which happens already in menopause with the drop of estrogen. So it's all connected, but what the heck should we be doing about this? Because this is another symptom that isn't so publicly known. Women were worried about hormones and breast cancer risk, but really the risk of cardiac event is higher than all of the cancers combined. So what can we be doing?
So again, it's, there's all these loops here, right? So we know that stress is related to higher levels of cardiac issues in both men and women. So it's a precursor for some of these things. And we also know that the chemicals that are released in our body can change what's happening inside our blood vessels, essentially. So again, if we can change the start of that loop. So if we look at potentially anxiety as one of the big causes of a lot of these changes, and pushing a lot of cortisol, that stress hormone, into our body. Lots of cortisol relates to weight gain. Weight leads to other bad things for us as human beings. If we can come down to the base, which is like, let's get, and it's so multifactorial, so it's not just one thing, but if we can affect a change on breathing, we can start making changes down the line. So if we can start with breath work, get that rest and digest system activated, we know from the research that when you do that, cortisol goes down. So the stress hormone goes down. Stress hormone goes down, you're less likely to go through the negative effects of having lots of that in your body. So again, the research shows that there can be significant changes in blood pressure just by doing breath work. And here's the thing, though, that I think is really important. It's like anything else in life, it has to become a daily habit. So it has to be something that we do on a regular basis to give us a good foundation. So to really get that nervous system back into like this calm state, if we just do these things when we're freaked out, okay, that's fine, but it doesn't give you that baseline. And there was a Dr. Brown who talked about this. He's a psychiatrist who talks about breathing. And he said, he'll hear people say that, when I get really anxious or if I'm needing to do something, I'll breathe then and take conscious control of my breathing. And he said, when you do that, that's like waiting to brush your teeth after they've all fallen out. Like it's too late, right?
Right.
So it's about creating this behavior on a daily basis. And that's where we love wearables, because when we look at what creates a good habit, and there are a few things. There's a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he talks about a few things that are important. So you have to make it obvious, right? And for us, having the device sitting on my desk is a reminder, okay, I can take 5 minutes out of my day right now. And that's the crazy thing. The research also shows that just 5 minutes a day is enough to start making these changes. So, make it obvious with something. He also says, make it attractive and satisfying. So inside the breath that I see you're wearing as well, which makes me so happy, but there's vibration inside of it. And that sensation, there's something to that as well that's really important. It's a pleasant sensation. It's kind of this calming, goes back to our roots and our core of who we are as human beings, and that we're all vibrating frequencies. But there's also something about vibration that affects the vagus nerve. So that, again, that's that nerve that I talked about for the rest and digest side. And research into how vibration can stimulate that nerve as well, passively. And you can see all these really nice changes to the cardiovascular system just by stimulating that nerve.
Unbelievable. You've got my mind going in so many different directions. One of them in particular is my journey and our community's journey through mental health and menopause. And I'm reflecting on some instances. I should have asked you this before today, but in severe stress, I'd be talking to someone who I don't want to talk to, or I'm talking to someone about a topic I don't want to talk about. I find myself almost, it's hard to breathe as I'm talking. And I consciously know this is like, what's going on? I'm about to like either pass out because I can't get enough oxygen, but I'm talking and I actually can't, that like the breath isn't going in. And is that the stress response or what's going on with my physiology?
Definitely a stress response. And so what happens is we start freaking out, and we start breathing really shallow. It's just, again, you now that fight or flight has stimulated a bunch of cortisol. That's making physiological changes. Your heart is racing. When your heart's racing, you're not going to be taking nice deep breaths. You're going to be breathing quickly, because that's part of, like, again, when I said running away from the tiger, that's how it's going to be happening. And now you're in a situation where you're not running away from a tiger, but you're still having all these feelings of that. And it feels like, and when you're speaking, that's, you need to get your point across. And so there's this thing we do as humans where we're just ready to jump on the conversation. And even before we start speaking, we probably have a bit of air in there and we're holding our breath because we're just like ready to go. Right. Yep. And so all these things, and you don't even know this is happening. So when I was doing my PhD research and looking at speech recognition systems, which were making people so mad. So these are the precursors of Siri, right? And they weren't as good as Siri. And so when people were interacting with them, they're getting so mad at the computer, yelling at it, waiting to see if it understood what they said. And so I had them hooked up to their chest and their abdomen, hooked up to see what they were doing with their breathing and how much air they're exchanging. So they're holding their breath. They're speaking, they're breathing 5 times as much, and they're holding they are holding their breath abnormally, just waiting to have this interaction. So when we speak and we're in a pressure situation, we aren't in that nice calm state where we're just breathing deeply. And then what starts happening is your body says, okay, you don't have enough air to say what you want to say. So all of a sudden, all your muscles here start going, and your vocal folds start cramping down. So now you've got all this tension in your neck and your jaw because it's trying to preserve whatever little bit of air you've pulled in by just moving your chest a little bit. So it has all these downstream effects that are very real, but we don't even know that it's happening. So that's how I would explain that whole situation that you felt yourself in. Now,
so stop immediately. I should stop talking, and it doesn't happen anymore. But if it ever does, or for our community who's listening, just stop talking and
take a few deep breaths. Okay. You know how your mom would tell, or your dad, whoever your loved one would say, take a deep breath. You know, you're freaking out as a kid. And there's wisdom in that, right? Because it does reset the system. Now, the thing is, again, we breathe differently for different reasons, right? So when we're speaking, we breathe one way. If we're running, doing exercise, we're breathing another way. If we're just sitting, we're breathing another way. So the breathwork exercises that are helpful aren't something that you do 24 hours a day, but they're definitely something that, again, helps build up that nervous system resilience so that when you get into situations like what you're in, you're able to be more aware, be more calm, and maybe even say, oh, wow, I'm going over to the other side here. I'm going to take a few deep breaths.
That's incredible advice. And what I'm hearing from you is it is a cumulative effect. The more you recognize this, start practicing, you may not do it all the time, but at least when you're in a situation, you can recognize and revert.
For sure. Because you're just more calm. You're not, like I said, already off in that the thing that triggered you, you're not so far gone that you're already into this a massive fight or flight mode.
So on the topic of mental health, which is such a prevailing symptom for women in menopause, and we've talked to a lot of doctors who reinforce the fact that GPs get 8 hours of training for menopause in medical school, so they're not armed with the research, the data, the education, the support to properly advise us. Oftentimes, and this happened to me, I was just prescribed antidepressants and go do more yoga and whatever nonsense, which didn't really help. Ultimately, through my journey, I ended up feeling that it was the right thing for me to try hormone replacement therapy, which really helped. And through all of that journey, though, until I really set my hormones and did a whole bunch of different things lifestyle wise, it's been a journey of a couple of years. There were still moments where I call it, and my kids call it, just mother in road rage. And whether it was actually in my car or not in my car, there was an inexplicable anger that was connected to, obviously, all the other things going through my body, menopause and external factors I couldn't control. But it was shocking to me how I could have run people off the road. The anger was so intense. So it feels like this could have helped me in those moments.
I think so. I mean, just from my own personal journey with anxiety, it was the first time I ever had a panic attack. I was, this is so going to date me, but I was in a movie theater watching Top Gun. And I was like, all of a sudden I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, what the heck? I think I'm dying. And I was so young, like I might have been 18 or 19, I don't know. And it freaked me out. But it went away, right? And it didn't come back until I was doing my undergraduate degree. And all of a sudden this thing hits me again where my heart is racing and I'm like, I feel like I can't breathe. I actually went to the doctor and I said, I think I'm having a heart attack here. Something is wrong. I didn't know about anxiety. And so she said to me, here's what sounds like it is. It's anxiety. I'm glad she didn't, at that time, prescriptions for it weren't as much something that was out there. And so, once I knew what it was, at that time in my life, it was like, okay, I just have to get control of a few things in my life. And it didn't come back. So that's why I'm saying I'm glad she didn't prescribe anything, because I went along in my life quite well until getting towards an age where all these other changes come and having other life factors, running a business and et cetera, et cetera. And now all of a sudden anxiety is like creeping up and it got out of control. It really did. And, it was interesting. Dr. Joe Dispenza talked about our thought patterns. And, if you keep playing, and anxiety is really future thinking. It's like ruminating about like all the things that could go wrong. I'm anxious about something that might happen. And you're thinking about that. And then you're thinking about it. And as you do that, you're creating this loop. And he said, your body becomes so used to that all of a sudden it's going to do it for you. You don't even have to think about it. So you wake up with a panic attack. And which is what was happening to me. And what he said was, imagine if you could replace those thoughts with something that was calm and loving. And now you're setting yourself up for a love attack. Now that's easy to say when you have a calm system. But if you are anxious and you are already so revved up and that fight or flight side is going like crazy, it's really hard to shift your mind to think about something peaceful and positive. So what really changed for me, I'd heard about breath work. I had done it how Dr. Brown said not to. I had done it when the teeth are falling out, where the wheels are coming off the car. And it had, maybe for that situation, I got through it but on this chronic level of stress that I was experiencing, I needed to do something different. And so when I started a regular daily practice of breath work, life changed. Now, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like I did it for 2 days or 3 days and then all of a sudden things were better. I'd say it takes, for me, it took about a month where it was like, oh, I'm not waking up with panic anymore. And
Mm.
oh, this guy cut me off in the car. But now I have the mental space to say, I don't need to get angry about this. Like kind of
Mm.
that thing that Dr. Dispenza was talking about, where it's like, I don't have to perseverate on this. I can understand this anger and then have enough what I would call just space, for lack of a better word, to like let it go. And that balance. So for me, it was critical for changing how I felt, and having downstream effects on these other things like someone making you crazy and making you feel mad and all that kind of stuff. I can definitely identify it much more quickly and then let go.
So let's talk about the device and
Yeah.
the app. And now that I've read the research and we're talking, it feels like a necessary tool in our toolkit to navigate menopause, just because of all of the things it will touch, from sleep to anxiety to stress. And then, oh, by the way, our relationships are better, we're calmer, the cortisol isn't there, so we can lose weight easier. Like, why isn't, let's start with breath work and then go to hormone therapy. Like, this feels like a life-changing tool for us to navigate menopause.
For sure. And I think that, it's there's a combination of things that can be helpful, right? So it's not like it's just this and nothing else. There's the reality that our hormones are changing, and I'm so grateful that physicians are now looking at this and helping women with that. But let's put other things into our toolbox to help with the nervous system. So, we have a hormonal system that's off, but we also have a nervous system that's off. So let's bring these things together and for the best outcome possible. And I think the other thing that there was a study that looked at deep, slow breathing. So essentially, when we look at breathing, one of the types of breathing that has really been studied a lot in relationship to anxiety, et cetera, is just generally called deep, slow breathing. So that means usually 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. So it's just at a very basic level. This is a golden breathing exercise. And when they did a study, this is a recent study, just came out last year, in menopausal women, what they found was that they were able to react better. So you talk about reaction in a car, reaction times were improved after this type of breathing. And not only like reaction to do something, but inhibitory reaction, like to stop yourself from doing something. That was all improved. And also postural control, which was really interesting. They related that to, if we're more focused and aware, then postural control will be better. Sorry. So I know I took us off your original question.
Okay.
Sorry, Lara.
No. It's incredible. And when you're talking about the 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, when I got the device and I did a baseline measurement of how I was breathing, I'm at 3 and 3. And that's when looking at the app going, take slow breaths, and then, inhale, exhale through your nose. And I was so far away from what could be a calm breathing practice.
Yeah. And that's why, so what we've built into the breath wearable and the app that goes with it is the ability to change that length of inhalation, exhalation for any of the exercises. Because you know what, like I said in the very beginning, we're dealing with muscles. And some of those muscles haven't been used optimally for a long time. So if I said, Lara, do a 6 second inhale, exhale, you might feel like, I don't like this. It doesn't feel good because you aren't yet conditioned for it.
Mhm.
So it'd be like if
Mhm.
I told you to go run a marathon, but I hadn't helped you work up to that, right? Your
Yeah,
muscles
yeah.
would get ready for it. So, it's what I love about the way that we've made the product is that you can change that. So you can find it'll make a recommendation for you by measuring your breathing, but you can find your own comfort level and you
Mhm.
can do that for each exercise. So
Mhm.
even though the literature says 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, if right now for you what's comfortable is 4 and 4, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, then
Mhm. Mhm.
that's what you should do. And then
Mhm.
eventually work your way up to this golden standard, essentially.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so we've worked that in. We've also worked in different lengths of breathwork sessions. So you can do anything from 3 minutes to 15 minutes. And so if it's a busy day and I just want to get some sort of breath work in before I start at my desk, then I'll set it for 5 minutes. If it's the end of the day and I feel like I want to have a longer session, I do that. And what I have found is sometimes when I just in the morning, when I set it for a short session, um, because that vibration, what it does for me as well is it really gets me out of the hamster wheel in my head,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
because the vibration on my chest brings my focus there. So I find it
Okay.
really stops that race
Mm.
thinking. And 5 minutes goes by like that. And I'm like, oh, it's already done. I want to do five more because it feels good and I feel relaxed. Um, so so that's one part of the product. On the other side, we also have built in some experiences and we're working on some more in the background. And what those experiences are, you don't have to breathe in any special way. They're just meant for you to get the feeling of the vibration on your chest, and they have some sounds and stuff associated
Mm.
with.
Mhm.
My favorite there, and one that we're going to be doing some more with, is the heartbeat. So,
Mm.
what research has shown is that actually, just by feeling a heartbeat on your chest, you can stimulate that rest and digest side of your nervous system to actually like calm you just from that feeling of
Mm.
vibration. So that's one of my favorite ones. I love it. But the same thing with the others that are in there. The intent is that that vibration will have an effect on your nervous system functioning and just calm you. And you can chill out and not have to think about breathing in any specific way.
Wow, I'm so excited to get in and start playing with it and try these different experiences. I'm tempted, and my team is tempted, and my children would be say, why don't you wear it every day, all day, just to see how you kind of can get kind of the stress under control. Because I don't feel stressed, except for there's some external factors. And then my dentist said, suddenly you're grinding your teeth. It feels like this is going to help settle me down, and I can't wait to play with it.
I can't wait to hear, Lara, how it goes for you. It's been a game
Yes.
changer for me, really. And I know that sounds biased because I'm the CEO of the company, but I love it. It's just part of my daily routine that I look forward to, actually.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Rieger, where can our community find this life-saving, miraculous wearable technology?
Well, you can find us online at Get Breath, and breath is spelled BRETH. So
Okay.
drop the A, getbreath.com, as well as potentially on your platform
Yeah,
for your listeners.
definitely. Yes. Okay. So we thank you so much for exposing us. I am embarrassed and sad that we didn't know about this important tool before now, because Lisa and I are here going like, oh, we can't wait to expose our community and women everywhere to this incredible tool.
Nice. Thank you, Lara. I'm really excited for you. And I'm excited for all the other women who will have benefit from it.
Thank you, Dr. Rieger.
You're welcome.